Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Estate Right Now, where we talk about real estate matters that matter to you. My name is Jay Izzo, and we are live here from Linda Craft Team Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. And my guest today is Dwayne Reese. He's a senior listing partner and expert buyer's agent for Linda Craft Team Realtors. And today, Dwayne, we are going to talk about equity and leverage in homes.
Equity and leverage. That is correct, Jay.
Yeah. So, we've had a lot of discussions about, what's going on in the market, but maybe not to this extent, because some recent articles have come out, but maybe not to this extent of how much equity actually people have in their homes and how they can leverage it.
100%
So why
correct.
don't you just jump us in there?
All right, Jay, let's jump off with one eye-popping, startling dollar number.
Okay.
Wall Street Journal recent article, $28 trillion. Now, you might hear that number and wonder, what $28 trillion? Is that the new amount of national debt that our country has? Is that, we're in the midst of this debt crisis right now, where
whatever it is,
a lot of negotiations going on. Is it that? No, not $28 trillion. $28 trillion is the record-breaking amount of home equity that the 260 million homeowners in this country have in their possession.
Wow.
Locked up in that house that they own.
So there's $28 trillion in equity,
right,
among 260 million homeowners.
That is correct, and I can't do the math in my head on that. That's way too many zeros for my brain or for my calculator.
I can't do it either. You got when you get past a certain amount of zeros, I'm not doing that in my head anymore.
Exactly. So let me break that down for us. On an individual basis. So you and I are both homeowners, and I've been a homeowner since 1996, and I remember the very first home I purchased in 96 that I turned around and sold in 99 in a 3-year period of time. And I did not have $28 trillion of equity in that little ranch house in Hickory, North Carolina. I can assure you, I was very pleased to have walked away with about $20,000 of equity in that house. And
which was a big deal.
It was a huge deal because that allowed me to purchase the next house. And that's part of our American homeowner dream. I think, you buy the first house you can afford, and then you step up to the next house that fits your family needs or your lifestyle needs at that time. But today, the last 3 years, really 4 years post-pandemic, we have had just a really unprecedented set of events that have gone on for homeowners, for buyers, for sellers. But one of the things that has done is that has fueled this record-breaking amount of home equity that we have, in spite of the fact that a lot of people did cash out refinances in 2021 with that equity. So in spite of the fact that people were bringing equity out, the values have continued to accelerate so much that we're still sitting on record-breaking home equity, $28 trillion. Give you two numbers. The average homeowner, 20% of average homeowners right now say that they have at least $300,000 of home equity in their property. Another 70.
Wait, how many percent?
20%.
1 out of 5 people.
1 out of 5 people have at least $300,000 of home equity. That's a lot.
Wow.
Think about that from a price appreciation standpoint. We have higher interest rates right now, and that hurts if you're trying to get a mortgage a little bit. But if you have money in a money market or a certificate of deposit, you're seeing better returns than you've ever had. But if you think about that amount of home equity sitting in your home, and we're seeing home markets appreciate at 5%, then your equity theoretically is appreciating at 5% as well. There's another 70% of people that estimate they have at least $100,000 of home equity in their property.
Wow. So
when you think about that, you're only talking about 30% that have less than $100,000 of home equity. It's one of the reasons we're not seeing the amount of foreclosures that we would have seen in the real estate housing bust of 2008 to really 2010 or so. Not saying those aren't out there, because we are seeing a little bit of pressure on the consumer and on the home buyer right now with just higher inflation and those kind of things. But still, the vast majority, 70% of homeowners, are sitting on a substantial amount of equity that they have a lot of options of how they could really leverage. That was the word used, leverage that home equity. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now relative to the home equity right now.
So when we talk about leveraging that, right? How can they leverage that equity now? Really great question.
So I would say two things. It's one thing to think that there's $28 trillion of home equity out there in the United States, right? But that number doesn't matter to you and I as individuals or the homeowners that might be listening to us today. What matters is the amount of home equity I have, right?
Yeah.
That's what really matters. That's where the rubber meets the road. And so I would I would really challenge consumers, homeowners to two things. One, the first thing you want to do from a standpoint of leveraging your home equity is to find out genuinely how much you have. And really the first step to doing that, can you go on Zillow and get his estimate? Yeah, you sure can. But that's a plus or minus 10%. It's an algorithm. It may be right. It may be wrong. It's like the betting odds on, Vegas tonight on the NBA basketball game.
Right.
There's betting odds out there. So the Z estimate is there. But I think the first step most consumers, homeowners need to do is reach out to a professional, reach out to a realtor that is experienced and knows the market.
And you've done this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I came from a meeting earlier today, a listing appointment, if you will. And these particular homeowners, they're not ready to sell their home yet. Right. But they need to know the value of their property for meeting with their financial planner coming up in the next week so that they know the exact timing of when they want to sell their house. Right. Is that 6 months from now? Is it 12 months from now? Is it 24 months from now? But they didn't know the true value of their home. And that's where I was able to step in, do a valuation report for them, sit down with them in their home this afternoon, walk them through that report and say, okay, this is the amount of equity you have in your house. This is the amount of net proceeds when it does come time for you to put that house on the market and sell. That's leveraging that equity. Second idea I would give would be home repairs, updates, if you will. If you're living in a house that, let's just say, was built pre-2010, if it's built post-2010, probably doesn't need a lot in the way of updates. But pre-2010, you might be having a house that needs a little bit of cosmetic work. Maybe you need a upgraded deck. Maybe you want to screen in your porch. Maybe you just need minor repairs like paint or cabinetry or flooring, those kind of things. That's where you can tap into that equity. You may not be ready to sell your house right now, but tap into that equity at a decent interest rate, get those updates done, and then work to rebuild that equity. Because keep in mind, equity is not static. Equity is always growing. So let's just say you take out $25,000 of your home equity. That's the amount that it's needed to get your updates done. You're not planning to sell right away, but you might be planning to sell 12 months from now, 18 months from now, 24 months from now. In 24 months, you're going to have appreciated that much more and really have appreciated past the amount of money you took out in equity to do those updates. It also, those updates make your house much more attractive to the next buyer. Makes your house that much more desirable.
And actually gives more value to the house.
100%.
Ultimately, right, to do some of those cosmetic things.
Right.
Or some of those updating things because you and I both know in this industry, right? And this is just the psychology of buying, right? We have a tendency to inflate how much things will cost when we think they have to be repaired. Right. And from the other side, we know what the truth is. We know how much it's really going to cost. And then, on the seller side, because we're human, we under evaluate how much it's really going to cost. 100%
so
there's the buyer side, there's the seller side, and then there's the real estate side of the truth, right?
Exactly.
Because it really is true. And so you want to not just eliminate, you want to eliminate that. What you want to do is eliminate the psychological feeling that people have when they walk into a house. I know you do this all the time.
Oh yeah, always. Jay, I'll use my own personal residence as an example. I bought my house right at the start of the pandemic, so I'm one of those homeowners that got to experience some real strong growth in home equity. And I'm living in a townhouse that was built in 2017, and it's still in great shape. But my paint on my walls was 6 years old this year.
Right.
The carpet is builder grade carpet that's 6 years old. Right. So we've already started the process of doing the updates. We had the house painted in January. Right. We're dragging our feet a little bit on the carpet right now, but that's coming next. And so just those minor updates, and I say minor, it costs some dollars to do that paint job, and it's going to cost some dollars to do that carpet. So those are value adds that if I were ready to sell my house, they would make my house that much more attractive to somebody walking in as perhaps a first-time home buyer.
Well, so, we did that. We gutted the townhouse that we now live in. We gutted it and, put in different flooring and upgraded the flooring and the paint and all that sort of thing. But over the course of time, it made such a huge difference. We took out a wall and opened it up. Because it was a little bit tight, we felt it was a little bit tight, and they opened it up. But all those things now, when I look at it now, I'm like going, well, I would buy this house, because of the way it is, right? So we don't think about how really attractive a house can be because you don't know what the possibility is, because what they built 10 years ago, isn't what they're building today.
No. And you can walk in like, I'm showing houses all the time, but, and I look at houses all the time online in pictures, and I can spot the quick updates that have been done or the ones that haven't been done. And then you can look when you pull comparable reports and you go, you see outliers. You'll see outliers on price per square foot, and you go, oh, what is that all about? And you look at the updates and you go, oh, that's why.
Right.
And then you see an outlier on the opposite end, price really low, and you're like, oh, well, look. It looks like it came straight out of 1994. It's like, so you can see the difference that updates do. So,
Hal 1994.
Oh yeah, absolutely. My first child was born then. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yep. All right, so we've got this equity. We should be looking at doing some, maybe taking out a home equity line to do some upgrades. Yeah. We've got leverage to make a next purchase. But everybody's concerned about mortgage rates.
Everybody's concerned about mortgage rates. Jay, we've got people standing still right now. And that's kind of the interesting thing. The market has been, very interesting. I've joked around sometimes that the market is a little bit schizophrenic. It doesn't know what it wants to do or what it wants to be, or actually who it is today. And you're a psychologist, you get the analogy, but the market has been, we had so much demand that was artificially pulled forward through the pandemic. So a lot of buyers bought, and then a lot of them, I think the number is 70% of mortgage holders in this country right now have an interest rate below 4%. So
okay. All right. So let's think about that in terms of home equity. We got 1 out of 5 people who've got $300,000 in equity. We've got 70% that have at least 100,000.
No, yes, 100,000.
Right. So, and then what you just told me is that 70% still have a mortgage rate below 4%.
That is correct.
Okay. So some of this starts to fall into place, right? I mean,
that's why we have a standstill market.
Right. Because you've got equity and you've got a low interest rate.
Right.
Oh, you got to help us resolve this.
You just want to sit there, right?
right.
You just want to enjoy your house and enjoy your life and those kind of things. But here's the reality of things. The average homeowner only holds their house for about 3 years. Like we tend to be a very transient society. The majority of people don't live where they grew up. I'm an example of that.
I am too.
The majority of people, we live in the Triangle of North Carolina. We have so much relocation here that nobody's from here. Like when you meet somebody that's actually from Raleigh, that was born and raised in Raleigh, that's a unique, Paul Fitz, my wife.
Right. Your wife.
They're two that are born and raised. They're native of Raleigh.
They may be the only 2 people I know.
They might be. Maybe that's why they're good at karaoke together. So they're from Raleigh. So must be in the water. But anyway, we have this standstill market because people do have this large amount of equity, but they have super low interest rates. And so the first step in trying to figure out great decision making is don't let the fear of the unknown hold you in place. If you're a person sitting there, and let's just say, for example, you bought your house in, let me pick a year, 2019, and you bought a $300,000 townhouse. And in 2019, that $300,000 townhouse was perfect for your lifestyle at the time. And you locked in a 3.75% interest rate. And you paid 5% down. You got right now you've probably paid that mortgage balance down to somewhere in the neighborhood of 260. But your house right now is not worth 300,000. Your appreciation has gone to 450,000. So you're actually, as a homeowner that bought in 2019, you're sitting on $160,000 in home equity that you could unleash. You could leverage to purchase the next home. Let's just say your life has changed now. Now you got 1 kid. You have 2 children. You have a growing family. You need not a $400,000 townhouse or $450,000 townhouse. You need a $650,000, $700,000 single family home with a yard and all those kind of amenities and those kind of things. It would be very easy to tap that equity because you get that house sold. You use that equity on your next down payment. You're not paying 5% down now. Now you're paying 20% down. You're avoiding PMI. You're moving into a house that actually fits your needs better than that townhouse that you did really well on. And then you watch for the price appreciation on that next home. Because the one thing that's really been true and consistent of the housing market, U.S. housing market, and you can look back across decades, and this has been true, is that we continue to have rising home values. The only exception to that was a brief 4-year period of time, 2008 to about 2012, when a lot of people got hurt and a lot of people formed opinions. Think about this. If you're in your mid 30s, your earliest experience or knowledge of the housing market was that meltdown. You can't let that meltdown hold you in place. Interest rates, I love to watch the over under. I'm a big sports guy, so and I don't gamble much. Hardly any. But I look at it and I go, I don't like how they're treating my team right now. I think we're a little better. The over under on interest rates. If you asked me to bet on the over under on interest rates going up or down, interest rates are going to go down. They're going to go down 12 months, 18 months. I'm not a mortgage lender, but I talk to a lot of mortgage lenders. That would be the direction I would see things going. So if you're in that position where you're saying, I got all of this equity in my house, the house really doesn't meet my needs anymore. I'm ready to step up, but I'm letting the paralysis and the fear of those interest rates keep me in place. I would bite the bullet, make that jump, go ahead and get that interest rate that you're going to get. It's probably going to be 6.25% right now, but bank on and the hope that you're going to refinance that in a 12 to 18 month period, because here's the risk you're taking. You're actually taking a bigger risk, in my opinion. If you jump now, you're going to put your house up for sale in a very limited inventory market. You got the opportunity to attract more buyers because there's just not a lot of inventory out there. And you're in a position to make that next purchase in a little bit less competitive environment than we were in just a year ago, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. You're not going to be competing against 18 offers. You might only be competing against 3. You might be competing against no offers. It's easier to make that move in that kind of environment, a little healthier, a little more balanced market that we're in right now.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. I'm trying to paint this mathematical picture in my head. So I've got this extra equity. I think what we're not thinking about is I am putting far more down on the house. So if instead of having that 5%, I'm putting down 20%.
Correct.
So I've taken 15% off that house. And even though I'm at a higher interest rate, at the end of the day, I'm not paying for as much.
You're correct. You are. And Jay, we should have done this early on. We should have defined home equity. I really had that in my mind when we first started this conversation. Home equity is very simple. It's the current value of your home, current market value of your home, minus the amount you owe on your current mortgage. That's the amount of home equity you have. So if you bought that house for $300,000, now it's worth $450,000, and you've paid off on that mortgage. That's where your equity has grown. So that's the math on that, and that's the beauty of $28 trillion, in home equity. But that's also the importance of knowing exactly what your value is. Because until you know the current value of your house, you really are guessing at the amount of home equity you have.
And so, I mean, if people would just, contact you and say, hey, listen, I just want to know, what is this worth right now? They may have their eyes open and go, you know what? I guess maybe we can jump up and regardless of the interest rate, I'm actually putting more money down, which means I'm actually having less of a mortgage. Even though it might be at a higher interest rate, I've got really less mortgage than I'm actually dealing with because I've got so much more equity in the house.
Absolutely. It's one of those things I love to do. I love to do home valuations and jump in. My wife, Erica, is also in real estate, and we get just like everybody else, we get these automated valuations. There's one called HomeBot, and I get a Zestimate email as well. We always joke. We look at the HomeBot email, and it tells us our value, and it's always way higher than what we know it really is. And so, we have this joke. Okay, what is your number today? Like, we just got a HomeBot. What's your number right now? And our number really it's kind of been flat for the last probably, I'd say 3 months or so. But back during the pandemic, it was jumping. It was jumping,
and it was jumping every month.
Yeah, we get the HomeBot, and the HomeBot estimate actually then was not keeping up with where I thought it was.
Really?
Now it's way higher than what it is. And so my point there is that the algorithms that are out there, I'm not just completely discounting them, but they are not yet a substitute for somebody who knows the market, sitting down and looking at exactly what's going on in real time and going, this is what the last 3 homes sold in the last 3 months. This is what's currently on the market. And this is kind of where the market is going right now, where it's at. And so that's where you get true home equity.
Well, you're looking at actual comparables in a neighborhood, not just the general
100%
city. A lot of these estimates are supposed to be based on an area. You're actually doing, okay, if an appraiser was to come in, you're looking at it from that point of view of what are the comparables that they're going to use to make this evaluation, and you're being very specific.
Correct. That is correct. And I've got appraiser friends, so we're not appraisers,
right.
but we're doing a market valuation and market analysis.
Right.
But I've got appraiser friends, and I'll reach out and I'll go, hey, what do you think of these comparables?
Right.
Am I way off? Is this what you would be looking at? And I'll give you an example. I mentioned the appointment earlier this afternoon. One of the reports that we have access to, I pulled, and it's called RVM, and it's an algorithm that's pulling up market analysis. But when I looked at the houses that they used to calculate that RVM, the algorithm was not using the correct houses.
So it wouldn't have been used in the appraisal either.
No. And the number was really useless because I had been in the house. I had seen the updates they had done. I'd seen what they hadn't done. And it's a very contemporary house. It is a really unique floor plan. And so what I had to do was go broad, find the houses that most look like this one, and then go with a deeper dive to say, okay, these 5 are probably the best that this compares to. None of them were in that RVM algorithm. None of them. So it was really fine tuning on that. Now there are some, some of the neighborhoods where, there's 4 floor plans in a neighborhood and a lot of the houses look the same. That's a little easier to do. But even in that scenario, you may miss updates that were done. You may miss the fact that one has a finished basement and the other doesn't. And so those are the places where, expert advice comes in really, really helpful.
Well, I think even in those neighborhoods where there is only 3 or 4 plans, the other thing is, there are options and upgrades in those houses. So even though the outside of the house may look very similar, that doesn't mean that the inside of the house has the same thing as the house next door to you. Because it depends on what you decide to upgrade to, right? Whether, your kitchen counters or cabinetry or flooring. Right. I mean, there could be a number of things.
Well, and the other thing that's not accounted for there, Jay, is you can look at the exterior of a house. Sometimes you can tell, but you don't know how well that house was taken care of or how well it wasn't taken care of. And it doesn't take long. You could look at the same floor plan, same 2 houses, same neighborhood, and one homeowner has really taken care of their home. They've done consistent maintenance. They've done consistent cleaning, and you got someone else that hasn't. And that makes a tremendous difference in how well the house has been cared for, how well it's been maintained. You got an HVAC, you could have 2 HVACs, one's been maintained, one's not, and one looks like it's not, and it operates like it's not. There's value in all of those things. There's value in new roofs, there's value in upgraded mechanicals. So,
yeah. And then the older the neighborhood gets, right? Even though we want to make an assumption that everybody's treated their house the same, depending on who's upgraded and who hasn't, right? You just can't look at the outside of the house and really know.
No, you can't.
Especially in an older.
That's correct.
Neighborhood.
That is correct.
Because there could be a lot more value there.
That's correct. One of the things I always say to potential sellers when I go meet with them, and I always want to meet with them in their house, is I can look at reports and I can look at floor plans and I can look at square footage, but I can't get a full understanding of the house without setting foot in it, taking a look at how they've cared for it, what updates they have done. That all brings adds value to the house.
So, yeah. That, what I think, people need to, if you're watching, listening, however you're doing that with us, thank you for doing that, by the way. I think it really, you can't just look at these numbers that they are being thrown at you and just make the assumption that, this is what my house is worth. You really do need to have somebody come in.
You really do.
And really do need to do it.
Yeah, you really do. And let me circle back something I was saying earlier, Jay. I'm going to borrow this from a conference that I was listening to. It was kind of a webinar that I was listening to recently. I mentioned everybody standing kind of in place right now. The analogy or the acronym that got used was we're in a 4D housing market right now, not 3D. Okay. We're used to 3D, right? I was looking at pictures last night online. And I saw a 3D image of a house. It was really interesting to kind of take a look at, but we're in a 4D, meaning that the only people that really want to sell their house right now, there's 4 reasons. One would be death.
Okay.
Second would be divorce.
Okay.
The third would be departure. They're relocating out of the area. And the fourth would be downsizing. And there's a fifth, but it doesn't have a D to it. That would be upsizing, the analogy I used earlier. So in those scenarios, we're seeing that happen. People moving for jobs. They're either here or moving out of the area. We're seeing that happen. We do have an aging baby boomer population,
Sure.
and some of them are looking to downsize into single family homes, maybe even to active adult communities. So those are great reasons, but the bigger reason for me is not just those 4 reasons, but the amount of home equity that we have. If your house still meeting your needs,
right,
then that's where you should stay. If you're living in a house now that's not meeting your needs, you don't need to wait for death, divorce, departure, or downsizing.
Right.
You need to get in the right size
and make a move.
Exactly.
Right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
put that equity to use.
And don't let these interest rates scare you away from that, because you've got equity that you can leverage to actually reduce the amount of house that you're buying.
Exactly. Don't let fear, don't let fear hold you in place. If I'd let fear hold me in place in 1999, when I only had $20,000 of equity in my house, I'd have stayed put.
Right.
If I would have let fear hold me in place in 2003, when I sold my next house and only walked away with another $9,000, I would still be there. Progress matters. The one thing that's constant about life, we're always moving forward. Things are always happening and always changing. So, that the equity is there. It's record breaking 28 trillion.
Right.
Average homeowner about 190 in home equity. It's there. It's easy to leverage that and,
awesome.
And put it to wise use. So
this is great. You were great. This is great information. Tell people how they can get a hold of you.
Hey, you can reach me at 919-623-3731, or my email address. A lot of people like to call it Dwayner. It's Dwayne R at lindacraft.com.
That's awesome. Dwayne, thanks for being
Jay.
on the show. Hey, folks, that's the show. I say this every week, and it's true. You know what? You made a choice and you chose us. You had a lot of choices and you still chose us. We thank you. Give us a positive review wherever you're listening or watching the show. Let us know if you have something that you'd like to hear. We'd love to hear from you as well. And I say to you everywhere all over the world, ciao, every